happening on our planet right now. Okay, just for a quick recap, this is a very quick diagram of a 15-dimensional matrix. Alright, have dimensions 1 through 3, 4 through 5, 4, 5, and 6 actually, 7, 8, and 9, 10 through 12, and 13 through 15. Alright, the only thing we need to know for this discussion this evening is that each group of 3 dimensions creates something called a harmonic universe, and reality fields take place within that harmonic universe. Now, right now, our Earth is positioned in what is called harmonic universe 1. It's composed of the frequency patterns of dimensions 1, 2, and 3. When we speak of our origins as beginning on Tara, all those many years ago, we're talking about harmonic universe 2, which is the reality field that takes place in dimensions 4, 5, and 6. It's a higher vibrating universe than what we're in right now. What we are going to get into tonight is what our relationship is to that planet Tara that's in the second harmonic universe, and how our planet Earth ended up down here in the first place. For we need to understand those things if we are going to understand the significance of certain other material. The material this will lead into tonight is called something the Secrets of Amenti. The Secrets of Amenti go way back through our history, through the Egyptian period, but even further back than that. And many people at different times were aware of something called the Halls of Amenti, but very few people knew what they were or what they represented. They just knew they were very secret, and they were guarded within the metaphysical traditions of many different philosophies, but nobody knew what they were or why they were important. In understanding our relationship between Tara and Earth, we'll be able to begin to understand what the Halls of Amenti represent. And in order to understand the significance of the information I was just given, it is going to be important to know what Amenti represents. Now, I will let the cat out of the bag in the beginning of the discussion, and then I will lead you back through a trail of why this is important and what it means to us today. I was told several days ago that something called the Ark of the Covenant had sparked. And I said, what is that? And what does that mean? Because my communicators seemed very, very excited about this. And it meant nothing to me on a conscious level. So I asked them to explain it to me, and they did. They put a whole new chapter in my book and explained to me things that some ancient part of me knew, but I didn't know. So we're dealing with a reality today of something called the Ark of the Covenant, whatever that is, having sparked, whatever that means. By the end of this discussion, we should be able to understand what that means and the significance it will have to us today. Quick run on history here. We covered a little bit of this before in the last class, but I'll just start there and work our way up. But 560 million years ago, on the planet Tara, the second harmonic universe, a race called the Tournisians were seeded by a large group of intergalactic beings from the harmonic 2 universe and also from the higher harmonic universes. There are 5. The beings that are in harmonic universes 3 and up are not in physical form anymore. They're evolved consciousness that are in pure energy form. So these beings from the higher harmonic universes motivated some of the beings within harmonic universe 2 who do have some form of physicality to create an experiment together in which a new race strain could be created. This race strain was very special because it was intended to be able to hold the whole energy pattern of an oversoul, not just a soul. So the Tournisian strain were created to be guardians of the planet Tara, and they were created, biologically speaking, in a way that would allow them to hold much more energy than most other races could. So all these races contributed their genetic imprint to the Tournisian strain. Okay, they evolved for quite a while on Tara. They were originally seeded, and this is right into our mythology here, our Christian story. They were seeded into a place, it was a continent, that was called Eden. E/D-E-N. It was not Eden, it was Eden. That was the name of a continent that was on Tara at this time. So the race was seeded in there, and that's where our stories of the Garden of Eden come from. That's the garden they were referring to. It was on Tara. Alright. Now, the Terran races evolved for about 8 million years, doing quite well. There were 12 sub-races within the racial strain, and they all carried the 12-strand DNA package. They were gods compared to us. They didn't reproduce like we do. They reproduced by fission or budding, where they could just replicate by combining energy fields. It was an awesome type of existence to be a Tauranissian. They didn't die. They didn't have to. If their consciousness became bored with being in a body, they would simply demanifest it and leave. Okay. About 8 million years after they had evolved into very, very sophisticated cultures on Terra, there were interactions from other stellar groups from Harmonic Universe 2. They would visit, they had an open stellar community, just like we have a lot of cities where lots of people pass through. Well, lots of intergalactic communities would pass through Terra at that time. By 8 million years ago, they started to digress because their gene codes got mixed with the gene codes of some of the other star people that they weren't originally intended to blend with. And because of the digression that occurred, certain separations occurred between, not only within the genetic code, but also between the belief systems of the people. And two primary groups began to faction out of the Tauranissians. One were called the Alanians, and the other were called Lumians. And they both coexisted on the continent of Eden, creating a culture called Alania and Lumia. The Alanians became, because of their more exaggerated intermixing with stellar groups, became much more aggressive than the Lumians. And they began to dominate the Lumians and make it very uncomfortable for them to be there. They also began to use technologies that were drawing energy from the core of Terra and using it in ways that was not in harmony with planetary physics. The Lumians were aware of this, and they knew it, and they knew something bad was going to come out of it, but the Galanians wouldn't listen, and they didn't, they just wanted to dominate the Lumian culture, and that was it. Okay. Because there was so much tension being created on Terra between these two groups, the Lumians asked something called the Sirian Council, which was from the star system Sirius. There's a star system Sirius in Harmonic Universe 2, just like we have a star system Sirius. It's like its twin reflection in the higher dimensional field. The Sirian councils had been one of the original overseers of the Tauranissian experiment because they had contributed a lot of genetic makeup to our experiment. So we are related to the Sirian cultures through our original gene codes. They asked the Sirian councils to help them with this problem that they were having with the Alanians. What could they do about this? And the council intervened and got involved with a group called the Elohim, which appear in our biblical stories. The Elohim were actually a group that were from Harmonic Universe 3, a higher Harmonic Universe. They were not physical. They were not even as physical as the Tauranissians. And they had been created by Lyran groups that were founders of a lot of the civilizations down here. So the Sirian Council and the Elohim got involved with the Lemanians or the Lumians that were having a problem with the Alanians on the continent of Eden. What came out of that was something called the Covenant of Pleiador, and the formation of a group called the Pleiadorians. The Pleiadorians started out as the Sirian Council giving permission and assistance to the Lumian people so they could move most of their race to a smaller continent that existed on Terra at that time, but it was not in a highly civilized state of being. There were beings on it, but they weren't highly civilized. So through the Sirian Council and the Elohim, the Lumians were given a way to get away from the Alanians and evolve in their own. They moved most of their people across the seas, and they took them to this new continent, and they named that continent Mu, and that's where our legends of Mu come from. They were not from Earth, they were from Terra. All right? There were other series of events that paralleled the Atlantean and Lemurian dramas that did occur on Earth, but Mu was on Terra, and that was that level of that part of our history. It came from Terra. Okay, so for quite a while, the Lumians evolved on Mu. They created something called the Council of Mu and set up their own governmental structures and all that kind of thing. They also set up something called the Priesthood of Mu, which was, priests were male or female. They didn't make a gender distinction. but they were very focused on adhering to and teaching of the sacred law of one, which was unity consciousness, the understanding that we all come from the same source and that we're all related and have to work in harmony. So these things were set up, and they evolved for quite a while, but there was a problem with some of the strains, just like a lot of the Alanians had mixed with the interstellar groups, so had the Lumians. So they didn't have a pure 12-strand DNA code anymore, and it was continuing to digress. So the Elohim and some other groups got involved, and they interbred with them, and they created a race called the Saras. The Saras basically purified the Lumian genetic code, so that race could continue to evolve rather than digress. Well, okay. At a certain point in the evolution of the people on Mu, there were things called the Syrian Rebellion broke out, and this broke out in Alania. The Alanians were run by something called the Templar Solar Initiates. They were a group of spiritual and political beings that were appointed originally by the Syrian Council to run things in Alania. Well, they decided to side with Syrian Anunnaki groups, which were a seed Syrian race, and the Syrian Anunnaki were rebelling against the Syrian Council, and they were trying to take over their own Sirius planetary system. The Templar Solar Initiates from Alania got involved with this and decided they would rebel against the Syrian Council too, and they would use power any way they wanted to. So the Syrian Rebellion broke out, and great hostilities broke out between the people of Mu and the people of Alania, because the Templar Solar Initiates wanted to take Mu and put it under their dominion. So there was many years of, I think it was about 40 or 50,000 years worth of this constant battle and push-pull between these two races. Finally, at one point, the Lumians were able to see, and the Saras were able to see, that there was going to be a catastrophe that happened in the future because of the way the Alanians were using power from the Earth core. And they tried and made petitions to try to convince them to stop this. They tried to get the Syrian Council involved to stop it, but nobody could stop them. They were going to do what they wanted to anyway. Knowing this was going to occur, knowing that there was going to be a major explosion in the planetary grid that would very possibly wipe out all of them, they had to form another plan of what they could do. So the Lumians and the Saras and the Elohim and the Syrian Council and a number of other ET races that were sympathetic to this cause, including the Pleiadians from Harmonic Universe 2, got involved in something called the Covenant of Pleiador. This was a rescue mission that was designed before a rescue needed to be. They knew the event was going to occur, so they devised, before the event occurred on Terra, they devised a plan by which the souls that were lost, the people who were killed in this explosion of the grid, whose vibrational rate would fall and their soul essence would fragment into pieces all over the place down in Harmonic Universe 1, they knew this would happen. And they knew they would have to be able to bring those souls back up, or they would be stuck in Harmonic Universe 1 from now until eternity. So that was part of the reason why they formed the Covenant of Pleiador, was to allow those souls that got trapped in time in the first Harmonic Universe following the explosion on Terra to evolve. But there was also another reason for the formation of it, and it gets into the physics of planetary grid structures. If you have a planet that is in, say, Harmonic 2, and part of that grid blows off, what that means is part of the morphogenetic field, the form-holding pattern for that planet, has been ripped away. In the case of Terra, the parts of the morphogenetic field that got ripped away ended up in Harmonic 1 universe. Once they emerged there, they separated into 12 different pieces and began to pull energy to them. It's a process called accretion, and they formed planetary bodies. They formed their own little solar system down in Harmonic 1 universe. But that left Terra without a portion of its morphogenetic field. Now, I won't get too much into the structure of how the harmonic universes relate to each other, but basically, upon entering the 15-dimensional matrix, what is created at the same time will be a morphogenetic field for whole planetary systems in the higher dimensions, and then from dimension 7 down, in the 3 harmonic universes, you will have one version of the planet in the third harmonic universe, another version of it in the second harmonic universe, and another in the first harmonic universe. So there's an evolutionary process that takes place here as planets ascend. It's dimensional ascension, and what it means is pulling in frequency into the grid pattern, and a grid pattern is made of key lines, which we talked about before. So anyway, when Terra did finally explode 550 million years ago, and a part of it was blown off